The day my husband introduced his girlfriend at our 28th anniversary party. He thought he had won. He had no idea I had been preparing for this moment for months. My name is Evelyn Brooks, and if someone had told me that the happiest-looking night of my marriage would become the night everything fell apart, I would have laughed. For 28 years, I believed my husband, Richard Brooks, and I had built something unbreakable. I was wrong. The ballroom sparkled beneath crystal chandeliers. Friends laughed over champagne. Our children greeted relatives they hadn't seen in years. A jazz band played softly while photos from our marriage appeared on a giant screen behind the stage. Every smiling picture told a story. Only I knew most of those smiles were borrowed. Richard stood at the center of the room, looking confident in his tailored tuxedo. Successful businessman, loving husband, community leader. Everyone admired him. They had no idea who he really was. As the master of ceremonies handed Richard the microphone, guests applauded. "My beautiful wife deserves a celebration tonight," he began. People smiled. "So before dessert," he continued, "I have a surprise. I expected flowers, maybe another speech." Instead, a young woman in a red dress walked through the ballroom doors. She couldn't have been older than 30. She walked directly toward Richard. Then she wrapped her arms around him. The room froze. Richard kissed her forehead. "My friends," he announced proudly. "This is Olivia." Silence. "I've spent years pretending to stay in a marriage that stopped making me happy." Someone gasped, "I think life is too short to keep pretending." He looked at me without the slightest hint of guilt. "So tonight I'm choosing honesty." He slipped an expensive diamond ring onto Olivia's finger. "I love her." The room exploded into whispers. Our daughter covered her mouth. My son stood so quickly that his chair crashed onto the floor. Richard wasn't finished. "Evelyn," he said calmly, "my attorney will send the divorce papers on Monday." He smiled. "The house will obviously remain with me." For a long moment, nobody moved. 28 years, reduced to less than 60 seconds. I looked around the ballroom. Some guests looked embarrassed. Others couldn't stop staring. A few quietly lowered their eyes because they couldn't bear watching a woman being humiliated. I slowly stood. Richard smiled. He expected tears. Instead, I adjusted the sleeve of my navy blue dress and walked toward the stage. Each step echoed across the marble floor. When I reached the microphone, I smiled politely. "Thank you, Richard." His eyebrows lifted. "I appreciate your honesty." He relaxed. He thought I had accepted defeat. Then I continued. "Since we're sharing surprises." The room became completely silent. "I think it's only fair everyone hears mine too." Richard frowned. I reached into my evening purse and removed a small envelope. "For the past 8 months," I said, "I've known about Olivia." Olivia's smile disappeared. Richard laughed nervously. "Don't do this, Evelyn." "Oh, I'm just getting started." I held up several photographs. "There you are in Aspen." Another photo. "And here you are in Miami." Another. "Lake Tahoe." People leaned forward. I hired a private investigator after discovering lipstick on one of Richard's shirts. Richard's face turned pale. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was looking for the truth. I placed the photographs on the podium, and I found much more than an affair. The room fell into stunned silence. I discovered Richard had secretly been using company funds to pay for luxury vacations, expensive jewelry, and a downtown apartment. His business partners looked at each other. Richard stepped toward me. "Evelyn, no." My voice remained calm. "You've spoken enough." I removed another envelope. "This folder has already been delivered to the company's board of directors." Another envelope. "The IRS." Another. "And our family's attorney." The color drained from Richard's face. "You see," I smiled softly, "while you were planning tonight, I was preparing for tomorrow." His hands began shaking. Guests watched without making a sound. "You always believed I wasn't paying attention. The truth is, I noticed everything. The missing invoices, the fake expense reports, the hidden bank account." Olivia slowly stepped away from him. Richard looked at her. She refused to meet his eyes. I continued, "The house you claim belongs to you. It doesn't. My father purchased the property through a family trust 22 years ago." Richard blinked. "What?" "The paperwork you signed every year. You never bothered reading it." Several lawyers attending the party quietly nodded. The trust allows only blood relatives to remain beneficiaries. I looked directly into his eyes. The moment our divorce is finalized, you lose every residential right to that property. A loud whisper spread across the ballroom. Richard looked completely lost. No, that's impossible. I calmly removed one final document. This is the trust agreement. I brought it tonight because… I smiled. I had a feeling I'd need it. Someone in the back began clapping. Another joined. Within seconds, applause filled the ballroom. Not loud, not mocking. Respectful. People weren't applauding revenge. They were applauding dignity. Richard tried grabbing the microphone. I can explain. Nobody listened. One of his senior business partners quietly stood. I don't think that's necessary. Another director shook his head. We'll discuss this Monday. Olivia slowly removed the engagement ring. She placed it on a nearby table. I didn't know about any of this. Without another word, she walked away. Richard called after her. She never looked back. For the first time in nearly 3 decades, he stood completely alone. I stepped away from the microphone. Our daughter walked toward me with tears in her eyes. I'm sorry, Mom. I hugged her tightly. You have nothing to apologize for. My son wrapped both of us in his arms. For years, I had believed holding my family together meant staying silent. That night, I learned something different. Sometimes protecting your family means finally telling the truth. Over the following weeks, everything changed. The company's board launched an internal investigation. Several financial irregularities were confirmed. Richard resigned before he could be removed. Many friends who had once admired him quietly disappeared from his life. Respect built on lies never lasts very long. As for me, I didn't celebrate his downfall. I celebrated my freedom. I returned to the interior design business I had abandoned years earlier. At 56, I opened my own studio. People told me I was too old to start over. I smiled every time I heard those words, because the happiest years of my life hadn't ended. They had just begun. One afternoon, nearly a year later, I received a handwritten letter. It was from Richard. Inside were only 3 sentences. I spent years believing success meant being admired. I lost the only person who ever truly loved me. I'm sorry. I folded the letter, placed it back inside the envelope, and quietly threw it into the fireplace. Not because I hated him, because forgiveness doesn't always require reopening a closed chapter. Sometimes peace comes from simply walking away. A week later, I stood on the balcony of my new home overlooking the ocean. The sunrise painted the sky gold. I held a warm cup of coffee in my hands and realized something. For 28 years, I had waited for someone else to choose me. Now, I finally chose myself.